There is a quiet crisis most people never speak of. It is not visible, like poverty. It's not headline-worthy like war, but it bleeds into everything. Your relationships, your career, your sleepless nights. It is the pain of not knowing how to live. We wake up each day with tasks, plans, alarms. We chase success, accumulate knowledge, seek validation, and yet a strange emptiness haunts us, as if something essential has gone missing. You scroll through advice, you hear, be yourself. But what if you have no idea who that is? What if yourself is buried beneath decades of roles, fears, and masks? Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, knew this problem intimately. He believed that many people do not suffer from clinical illness. They suffer from meaningless, not knowing why they're here, not knowing how to live. Your vision will become clear, Jung once said. Okay. Only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Jung didn't give a manual for life. He didn't reduce existence into 10 rules or productivity hacks. What he offered was more dangerous and more liberating. He called us to dive inward, to confront our shadow, to integrate our inner world, to become whole, to stop living someone else's story, and to become, in his words, the person you are meant to be. This video is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. We will explore Jung's most powerful insights, not in academic jargon, but in the language of your daily life. We'll ask ancient questions that still burn today. What makes a life worth living? Why do we sabotage our happiness? What is the cost of ignoring your soul? From ancient mythology to modern therapy, from the fire of transformation to the quiet agony of denial. This is a psychological and spiritual journey through the lens of Jung. Not just to learn how to live, but to remember what you've always known deep down. Because the real question is not just how to live life, but how to live your life, fully, consciously, courageously. To understand how to live, we must first understand how the idea of living well has been shaped, warped, and redefined over centuries. This question, how should I live my life, is not a modern crisis, okay? It is an ancient torment, okay? Each civilization, each thinker, each spiritual tradition has attempted to answer it. In ancient Greece, Socrates declared, an unexamined life is not worth living. But for him, this did not mean obsessive introspection or self-help slogans. It meant aligning life with virtue, with justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. Life was to be lived in service of truth, even if it meant dying for it. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, believed that to live well was to live in harmony with nature and fate. They taught detachment from external outcomes, mastery over emotion, and serenity in the face of chaos. You were not to be ruled by your passions. You were to shape them into strength. In the East, Taoism took a gentler route. Laozi, the semi-mythical founder of Taoism, spoke of Wu Wei, the art of effortless action. To live fully was to flow with the current of life, not fight it. Let go, surrender, and allow the Tao to guide you. In India, the Bhagavad Gita, a sacred philosophical poem, told the story of Arjuna, a warrior paralyzed by moral crisis. Krishna, his divine guide, tells him, it is better to live your own destiny imperfectly than to live in imitation of somebody else's life with perfection. This message echoes hauntingly across centuries, a spiritual anthem against imitation. And then came modernity. The Industrial Revolution gave birth to new gods: productivity, efficiency, speed. Capitalism taught us to measure our days not in meaning, but in output. Time became money, rest became laziness, and the soul became a vague, poetic luxury. It was in this spiritual drought that Carl Jung emerged, a Swiss psychiatrist born in 1875. Jung began his career alongside Sigmund Freud, but where Freud sought to reduce the human psyche to urges and repressions, Jung saw something more, a symbolic, mysterious, vast inner universe that pointed beyond the ego. Jung believed that to truly live, you must embark on the most dangerous and sacred journey of all, individuation. What is individuation? It is not self-improvement. It is not about becoming better. It is about becoming yourself, not the self your parents imagined, or your culture demanded, or your trauma shaped, but the self with a capital S, the soul behind the persona, the whole being you were born to become. Jung saw modern life as a tragedy of fragmentation. People wore masks. He called them personas, and identified with roles: the successful businessman, the nurturing mother, the obedient son. But beneath these masks lived the shadow, the rejected parts of ourselves. Our anger, our envy, our sexual impulses, our rage, our grief, everything we were taught to suppress. To Jung, a meaningful life was one that integrated these fragments, not one that pretended they didn't exist. He also introduced the idea of archetypes, universal patterns embedded in the collective unconscious. These were not just fictional roles, but deep psychological blueprints. The hero, the lover, the trickster, the wise old man, the great mother. These archetypes echoed across myth, religion, and dreams. They whisper to us through art and story, guiding us toward wholeness. So when you feel called to something deeper, when your dreams show symbols, when you feel a strange pull toward a creative act, a change, a crisis, Jung would say, this is the self calling you home. But our culture teaches us to numb that voice. We scroll instead of reflect. We consume instead of create. We perform instead of feel. And we wonder why. Even with comfort and freedom, we feel so utterly lost. Historically, life was tied to collective meaning, to tribe, to religion, to ritual. But modernity shattered those anchors. Nietzsche declared God is dead, not to celebrate it, but to mourn the collapse of shared meaning. In that vacuum, Jung didn't try to resurrect dogma. He sought to connect people back to their inner divine, to their personal myth. That's another Jungian idea. Personal myth. We are not just humans living random events. We are living stories. And if you do not become the author of your own myth, Jung warned, you will live out someone else's and call it fate. This is not just philosophy. It is survival. Because without meaning, the soul deteriorates. And when the soul deteriorates, society follows. We become addicted to stimulation, control, distraction. We fear silence. We fear depth. And we fear our own reflection. But the ancients knew better. They knew that to live was to descend into the dark, to face the dragon, to find the treasure, and return changed. This was the hero's journey, the dark night of the soul, the rite of passage. But now we are taught to avoid darkness at all costs. Yet, Jung reminds us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And so, to ask how to live is not to ask how to be happy all the time. It is to ask, how do I become whole? How do I live in alignment with what I truly am? How do I stop betraying my soul for approval, comfort, or routine? This is the question we'll carry forward. And in the next section, we'll explore how modern psychology, ancient wisdom, and the tension between the inner and outer world all shape this path toward authentic life. To live, in the deepest sense, Jung intended, is not merely to breathe, survive, or succeed. It is to awaken. And that awakening, psychologically speaking, is a confrontation with the totality of who you are. Your light and your shadow, your conscious and your unconscious, your image and your essence. Modern psychology has much to say about this journey, but much of it, knowingly or not, walks the path Jung paved. Let us begin with one of Jung's core insights, the persona and the shadow. The persona is the mask you wear to meet the world. It is your social face, crafted over time to gain acceptance, avoid conflict, and protect yourself. Okay? It is not inherently bad. It helps us navigate relationships, workplaces, and society. Okay? But when the persona becomes all you are, when it hardens into identity, it suffocates the soul. Behind it lies the shadow, the parts of yourself you have disowned, your vulnerability, your rage, your jealousy, your desire, your insecurity. We push these into the unconscious because they make us uncomfortable, because they do not match who we think we should be. Jung did not say, destroy your shadow. He said, integrate it. To deny the shadow is to remain half Olivia. Embrace it is to reclaim your fullness. And here, modern psychology aligns in internal family systems therapy. People are taught to meet their parts, different inner voices or fragments, not as enemies, but as wounded allies. You might meet an inner critic who sounds cruel, but underneath, it is often a frightened child trying to keep you safe. In cognitive behavioral therapy, the emphasis is on examining your automatic thoughts, many of which come from your shadow or wounded self, and replacing them with truth. In schema therapy, you learn how early beliefs shape your adult choices, often repeating painful patterns until they are made conscious. All of these therapeutic paths echo Jung's great message: what you refuse to confront will control you from the shadows. But there's more. Jung also introduced the idea of the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within each of us. The anima is the inner feminine in men, emotional sensitivity, creativity, intuition, connection. The animus is the inner masculine in women, assertiveness, logic, independence, clarity. In today's world, we often reduce gender and identity to surface-level categories. Jung saw a deeper dance happening in the psyche, a sacred balancing act. To live fully, he believed, we must make peace with our inner opposites. The man who denies his anima becomes cold, rigid, and emotionally starved. The woman who denies her animus may feel passive, disempowered, or lost in emotion. To live means to harmonize, not to split the self into binaries. This insight reflects ancient traditions, too. In Taoism, the yin and yang represent this very dance, light and dark, masculine and feminine, inner and outer, ever swirling in dynamic balance. In Sufi poetry, like that of Rumi, see the constant longing between lover and beloved, a symbolic echo of this psychological reunion. So much of the struggle we experience in life comes not from outside circumstances, but from inner disunity, a war between who we are and who we pretend to be, between our instincts and our ideals, between the soul and the mask. That is why Jung believed that living authentically means being brave enough to hold the tension of the opposites, not choosing one side, but integrating both. And here we touch on another Jungian insight: the self. The self is not the ego. The ego is your day-to-day identity, your name, your job, your roles. The self is the totality of who you are, known and unknown, conscious and unconscious, present and potential. The self is the organizing principle of the psyche, your soul's compass. When you dream, create, love, or suffer, when you go through a crisis, a transformation, a rebirth, it is the self trying to break through. But society rarely encourages this. Society teaches conformity. From school to career, you're molded into predictable shapes. Success is narrowly defined. Failure is pathologized. And so millions of people live in silent discontent, successful on paper, but estranged from themselves. That's why Jung was not just a therapist. He was, in many ways, a rebel, a mystic disguised in a lab coat. He said things modern science often still fears: that symbols carry power, that dreams speak truth, that myths are not old stories, but living realities, that synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, reveal the invisible architecture of life. Jung did not see psychology as a tool to fix people. He saw it as a sacred art, a map for reuniting the fragmented soul. And yet, many of his insights find affirmation in neuroscience and contemporary research. Take neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself. It echoes Jung's belief in lifelong transformation. Take the default mode network, the brain's self-referential system, which lights up during daydreams and inner reflection, and you find a scientific correlate to Jung's emphasis on introspection and symbolic imagination. What Jung called the unconscious, modern psychology might call implicit memory, cognitive bias, or emotional encoding. But the essence remains the same. We are shaped by forces we do not fully understand. And until we make them conscious, we are not truly free. Even the modern obsession with manifestation, as found in the New Age, can be traced to Jung's idea of active imagination, engaging with the unconscious through images, dreams, art, and intuition to create change, not just in the mind, but in life. So, how do you live? Not by mastering the external world, but by mastering your inner world. Not by avoiding suffering, but by finding meaning within it. Not by striving to become something else, but by becoming who you already are, fully, fiercely, truthfully. Jung understood that living is not a formula. It is a paradox. You must let go and take responsibility. You must grieve and celebrate. You must descend to rise, because you cannot climb toward your higher self without first honoring your lower one. You do not need more answers. You need better questions. You do not need a better personality. You need a more honest relationship with your soul. What happens when we don't live the life that's truly ours? When we ignore the inner call, betray the shadow, and silence the voice of the self. Carl Jung warned, the consequences are not always loud or dramatic. They are subtle, quiet, and devastating. Most people, Jung observed, do not become monsters or villains when they avoid self-realization. They become ghosts, not the kind that haunt others, the kind that haunt themselves. Ghosts of unrealized potential, ghosts of dreams postponed, ghosts of lives never truly lived. When we ignore the path of individuation, the deep inner unfolding of our authentic self, we suffer. But it's not always the kind of suffering that makes headlines. It's the kind that leaks into everyday life. Persistent anxiety you can't explain, a constant boredom, even in moments of comfort. A vague resentment toward others who seem to be more free. An ache, not in your body, but in your being. You might look successful, you might be respected, but if you are not aligned with your inner truth, you will feel strangely absent from your own life. Jung saw this absence everywhere, in neurosis, depression, addiction, perfectionism. He believed many of these ailments were not just mental disorders, but spiritual disorders, symptoms of disconnection from meaning. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, he said, and yet, not doing so is even more terrifying in the long run. Think of the man who suppresses his creativity for decades because it won't pay the bills, only to wake at 60 and realize he's lived someone else's script. Think of the woman who molds herself to please everyone, parents, partners, bosses, until she can no longer hear her own voice. Think of the child who learns early that their anger is bad and grows into an adult terrified of confrontation, secretly exploding in passive rage. These are not rare stories. These are the norm in modern life. The cost of ignoring the soul is not just personal. It ripples outward into families, relationships, communities. People project their inner wars onto each other. They demand from partners what they cannot give themselves. They parent not from presence, but from their own unmet needs. They build systems in politics, in business, in religion that reflect their unintegrated fears. Jung saw projection as one of the most dangerous psychological mechanisms. What we refuse to see in ourselves, we project onto others, blaming them, idolizing them, fearing them, controlling them. The man who denies his own vulnerability sees all emotion as weakness. The woman who suppresses her power envies strong women or tries to destroy them. The person terrified of their own chaos becomes obsessed with control over themselves and everyone else. This is why self-knowledge is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. And the longer we postpone that responsibility, the more distorted our lives become. You can see it in history. The most destructive leaders, tyrants, cult founders, corrupt revolutionaries were often people at war with their own shadow. Their inner fragmentation became national catastrophe. In myth and religion, this truth was dramatized through symbolic stories. The Greek myth of Narcissus is not just about vanity, it is about self-ignorance. Narcissus doesn't fall in love with himself, he falls in love with his reflection and dies because he cannot see past the surface. In the Bible, the fall of Lucifer is not just a tale of rebellion, it's a story of disconnection from divine truth, the inner source. In Buddhist teachings, suffering arises from ignorance, not just of facts, but of who and what we truly are. The consequences of ignoring the inner life are spiritual disorientation, moral confusion, and emotional emptiness. And in the modern age, those symptoms are epidemic. We are overstimulated, but underconnected. We have more access to information, but less access to wisdom. We curate images of our lives, but often feel alien inside them. We mistake freedom for the ability to choose. But Jung would ask, who is choosing? Is it your conscious self, or your conditioning, your wounding, your ego, hungry for praise? Freedom, Jung believed, is not the absence of limits. It is the presence of consciousness. When you are unaware of your shadow, you are its slave. When you repress your desires, they reemerge as symptoms. When you ignore your inner world, the outer world becomes confusing and cruel. This is why so many people feel like life is happening to them rather than through them. They've been cut off from their center, from the self, the organizing principle of meaning. But there is another path, and it begins not with drastic change, but with quiet honesty. To begin living fully does not require a complete overhaul of your life. It requires a shift in attention from the outer noise to the inner signal, from performing to participating, from reacting to reflecting, from asking, what should I do, to asking, what do I truly feel? That is the first tremor of transformation. But be warned, it will cost you. It may cost you the approval of others. It may cost you your current definitions of success. Hey, it may cost you your comfort, your roles, your illusions. But what you gain is immeasurable. Your soul back, your clarity, your quiet integrity. And the path does not require perfection. Jung never claimed wholeness was about perfection, said it was about completion, the inclusion of all parts. The privilege of a lifetime, he wrote, is to become who you truly are. That privilege is not granted by society. It is claimed in solitude, in silence, in those raw, unguarded moments when you dare to look inward and truly listen. Carl Jung did not offer a checklist for happiness. He wasn't selling a formula to fix your life. He was not interested in shortcuts. He was interested in truth. And truth, as he knew deeply, is not a linear path. It is a slow, often painful, but ultimately liberating process of becoming who you were always meant to be. Living fully, in Jung's view, is not about adding more goals, more structure, more productivity. It is about subtracting illusions, conditioning, personas, and shame. It is not about reinventing yourself. It is about remembering yourself. So how does one begin such a journey? We begin with 5 deep, psychologically grounded practices, rooted in Jungian thought, enriched by spiritual wisdom, and shaped by human experience. 1. Shadow work. Befriend what you fear in yourself. Jung's message was deceptively simple. If you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Shadow work is the process of meeting your hidden self, the parts of you that you avoid, reject, or suppress. These are not only your so-called negative traits like anger, jealousy, or fear. Sometimes your shadow contains your power, your sensuality, your truth, the very parts you were taught to fear or deny. Begin by journaling with the question, what am I afraid people might see in me? Notice what triggers or fascinates you. These reactions often reveal disowned parts of yourself. Keep a dream journal. Jung believed dreams were messengers from the unconscious, rich with symbols and emotions that can guide you inward. Remember, shadow work is not about shame. It's about self-retrieval. You are not here to destroy the parts that feel unworthy. You are here to hear them, care for them, and slowly reintegrate them with love. 2. Active imagination. Dialogue with the soul. Active imagination is one of Jung's most profound techniques. It's not passive daydreaming. It is a direct dialogue with the unconscious. It begins when you sit quietly with a feeling, image, or dream. You close your eyes and let the image come alive, and then you interact with it. You ask it questions. You let it speak back. You write it down or draw it. The point is not to analyze it, but to experience it. Through this method, you may encounter archetypal figures, the inner child, the shadow, the wise elder. They are not hallucinations. They are parts of your psyche speaking. Let them speak. Let them guide you. This process can feel surreal, even mystical, but it is deeply human. You contain multitudes, and all of them want to be known. 3. Ritual and solitude. Sacred time with the self. Modern life leaves little space for silence, stillness, or sacredness. We rush from task to task while the soul waits in the background. Every ancient tradition, from Sufism to Christianity to Buddhism, understood the importance of retreat. Jung himself built a tower in Balingen to retreat into solitude. He carved symbols into the stone. He lived without electricity. He returned to the primal rhythm of being. You don't need a tower, but you do need a space, literal or symbolic, where you can remove the mask and face yourself. Begin with 1 hour a week. No phone, no noise, just you. Light a candle, walk slowly in nature. Sit with yourself and ask, what part of me have I been avoiding? Okay. Or what do I need that I'm not giving myself? Solitude is not the absence of others. Okay? It is the presence of yourself. Okay? Living symbolically. Find meaning in the mundane. Jung believed that life was never random. It was symbolic. Okay? Every event, every relationship, every pattern, a mirror reflecting something back to you. This does not mean obsessing over science. It means living awake. A conflict with a friend may be more than a disagreement. It may be a wound seeking healing. A job that drains you may be more than bad luck. It may be the soul whispering, you've outgrown this story. Even depression, Jung taught, is not something to be fixed. It is the soul's cry for attention. Ask yourself, what is this experience teaching me? Reflect on recurring symbols in dreams, art, or thoughts. Live as if your life were a myth unfolding. You are not merely surviving, you are becoming. This shift changes everything. Life no longer happens to you. It begins to happen for you. 5. Integration, not perfection. Make peace with paradox. We live in a culture obsessed with healing, as if the goal is to eliminate all pain. Jung disagreed. He believed transformation was not about perfection, but integration. You are not meant to be flawless. You are meant to be whole. You can be both strong and soft, grounded and passionate, wounded and still worthy of love. Real transformation does not come from fixing yourself. It comes from learning to hold tension, to sit in paradox, to say, all of me belongs, instead of asking, how do I fix this part of me? Ask, how do I make room for it? Write a letter from your inner child to your adult self, from your shadow to your outer persona. Let your different parts speak. When you live this way, you stop splitting yourself. You stop performing. You begin walking as a whole, complex, beautiful human being. These are not quick fixes. These are lifelong practices, invitations to go inward. And the journey is not linear. It is not a one-time event. Jung called it the spiral of individuation. Okay? You do not walk forward in a straight line. You return again and again to the same wounds, the same questions, but each time you return with deeper wisdom, with more tenderness, with new eyes. Over time, something inside you begins to shift, not in the world, in you. You stop asking, what should I do? And begin asking, what is life asking of me? You stop chasing meaning and start creating it. You stop performing and start living. So, how do you live life? Not just survive it, not just endure it, but truly live it. Jung never gave a single, final answer. Because life, he believed, is not a puzzle to solve. It is a pilgrimage, not to a destination, but to a person, yourself. You are not here to be perfect. You are not here to be liked. You are here to become who you are, raw, flawed, luminous. To live, in Jung's view, is to enter a sacred conversation with your soul, to notice the symbols laid at your feet, to sit in the dark without running from it, to love the parts of you that were once banished, to forgive yourself for not arriving there yet, and to realize maybe there is no there, only this moment, this breath, this becoming. You live fully, not by escaping suffering, but by giving it meaning. Life is not something to control, but something to cooperate with. Fulfillment doesn't come when you finally arrive, but when you begin to notice what is already here within your heart, your dreams, your deepest questions. These questions, who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to become? Are not signs that you are lost. They are signs that you are awake. Okay. And in a world that numbs, distracts, and disconnects, simply being awake is a radical act. Carl Jung believed that each life is a myth unfolding, not written for you, but written with you. That myth speaks not in loud declarations, but in dreams, synchronicities, sudden longings, and quiet heartbreaks. Every moment, every encounter is a brushstroke on the canvas of your becoming. You may never fully understand why certain things call to you, why you quit that job, why that heartbreak shattered you in the exact way it did, why a certain idea, image, or aching desire keeps returning to you, okay? But Jung would tell you these are not coincidences, okay? These are whispers from the self, and when you begin to listen, life starts to shimmer with quiet significance. Not every story ends in triumph. Not every path is smooth. But Jung reminded us that meaning is often born in the valleys, not on the peaks. It's in the breakdowns, the sleepless nights, the dark nights of the soul. Those are the places where the real self begins to emerge. Because it's easy to wear the mask. It's easy to follow the script. But to truly live, that takes courage. It's a courage to ask, what is mine to do? It's a courage to grieve the person you pretended to be. It's a courage to show up, messy, uncertain, honest. This is the real spiritual path. It's not floating above life, but plunging deep into it awake, willing, open. So if you feel tired, lost, or confused, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It probably means you're closer to the truth than you've ever been. Stay there. Don't rush the answer. Let the questions reshape you. This is the journey Jung pointed us toward, the long road inward. It is not always comfortable, but it is real. And it leads not just to self-knowledge, but to self-trust. And eventually, to self-love. Because the end of the road isn't some perfect, final version of you. It's the moment you can look at all that you've been, the shadow and the light, the pain and the beauty, and say, yes, this is me. I am whole. So, how do you live life? Maybe you already know. Maybe, deep down, you've always known. You are just waiting for permission, for a guide, for a mirror. Let Jung be that mirror. Let this be your permission. And let your life, not your plans, not your resume, not your persona, but your life, be your masterpiece. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Too often, we hear something that moves us deeply. We nod quietly, okay? And then return to the same loop, the same distractions, the same emotional patterns, the same numb routine. But if Jung taught us anything, it's this. A single insight can change the entire direction of your life. Few act on it. So here is your invitation. Take just one moment today, even 5 minutes, to sit alone with yourself. No phone, no noise, no mask. Ask the question, what part of me have I been avoiding? Journal what comes up. Dreams, fears, longings, shadows. Jung believed that what you write from your unconscious has the power to heal you. Read Jung slowly. Let his words seep into you, not as facts to memorize, but as seeds to grow. Start living symbolically, that image that keeps showing up in your life. That person who stirs something deep inside you, that repeated dream. These are not meaningless. They are invitations from your soul. Drop the mask even just a little with one person. In one conversation, let yourself be real. You will be terrified and free. And finally, share this message with someone who feels lost. Not to give them answers, but to walk with them in the questions. Because the truth is, you are not alone. Millions are quietly wrestling with the same pain. I don't know how to live. Let's start talking about it. Let's make death normal again. Let's choose wholeness over performance. Let's build a world where being yourself isn't a luxury, but the most natural thing there is. If this video moved you, like, subscribe, and join this growing space of self-explorers. Not for clicks, but because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear this. And maybe you are their mirror. This isn't just another video. This is your reminder. You are not lost. You are becoming.